we need to think and we need to talk about things that are practical, and we need to go back and forth so you can hear our perspective and we can hear your perspective.
Of course.
If I start talking about anecdotal stories of a phone that I found outside Marble Arch, or somebody
you do know that I found the gentleman. I went to Scotland and I actually.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you had a nice meal.
No, it's not funny because he tried to abduct a 6-year-old girl, and I found him. And I found him because of his phone. I got into his email. I found out when he was having his job centre interview. I went to Scotland.
I have to take your word for it. Let's stick with facts. Let's stick with things that are actually affecting the country, not affecting minority
What I say
cases
is factual because I've actually, if you want to go online and check me out and what I've done,
Tommo,
yeah. So if you go onto my YouTube channel, I found a Sudan man. Phone, sorry. And when I went on his phone, he was obsessed with young white girls. His screensaver was a 6-year-old child from somewhere in Europe. We then found him. We found him in Scotland. We then went and we basically confronted him with the evidence we had. It's now had 2.7 million views on my Instagram. Anyone that wants to go on Danning.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Here we go. Here's the phone.
Right.
Here's the phone. No, you want to do factual? Go back, bro. Go back.
No, wait.
No, he'll find you because it's important. So it's important we deal with facts. You said it's important we deal with facts.
Look, you made a point. You said you saved someone's life because a child was being abused, right?
You see this phone?
Right.
Yeah, this is his phone. You see obsession with young white English girls.
That's disgusting.
Yeah? Disgusting. So we went and found him. It took me 3 months. It took me 3 months. Watch him. Look. Look. Crime is being.
You did a good job.
What did you just say?
Don't ask that again. Don't ask that again.
Someone rang it and it turned all the sound off.
Find him. Yeah. I did very good. Oh, sorry.
Stopped it.
What's the fuel?
He stopped it.
Yeah, it stopped there. Everyone was saying there's no sound. Crazy.
He said, "What's the crime?"
Yes, there should be a crime to go and.
Crime is
right. Let's not distract from the conversation. Yeah. So you're saying that you came across an individual that's got an affinity with children, and you confronted him. I think you did a great job. I think that's fantastic. And I think everybody would be doing that. And if you had my number, I'd probably join you. But do you see? I think many of us, we would join you on this. But the disparity and the issue comes here. Is it the perpetrators that are the issue, or is it the crime that's the issue? What one would you say when it comes to child abuse?
I want to know the crime.
That doesn't make sense. Anyone that commits any violence or anything against children, doesn't matter what colour they are.
Good.
It's about the crime.
Perfect. Yeah, so it did make sense to you. That's why you were able to respond. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you said was, I would give preference to the crime over the perpetrator.
That's right.
Whether the perpetrator was white,
absolutely.
Whether it was brown,
absolutely.
Whether it was purple or blue.
Absolutely.
We would join hands, and I would do the same, and that's what we're saying.
Can I respond to that?
I didn't think you needed a response.
Okay, so the response to that is you are totally right. But when you look at certain aspects of child abuse and child rape,
like Andrew.
Hold on.
Yeah, like that one.
Yeah. So
don't forget that
in
one.
this country, give me a second.
Go on.
In this country, the biggest number of paedophiles are my colour skin. Okay, factual evidence. Middle-aged white men. Yeah, committing child abuse against young children online.
Too many to like.
He's speaking facts.
Hold on.
I disagree with that.
No, that is true. But there are different types of crimes against children in terms of a single man on a computer, basically coercing children to meet them and then rape them. That's one. Then you have street grooming, which are done predominantly by gangs of men. What they do is they take young children off the streets who are from, say, had a bad life, or they're in in care system and stuff like that. Now, unfortunately, when we look at this, there are different ethnicities that, like I said, the biggest problem online is white men. But when it comes to street gang grooming, there is a huge problem with Pakistani men from different places in this country, which are raping en masse young white girls. Now, the problem I have is with that is one thing. They're not targeted. They do target Sikh girls, but they never target Muslim girls. They only target white, English, Sikh girls, like very vulnerable girls. The Sikh side of it is a very small minority. It still happens, but the vast majority are young white girls. And there are factual evidence in the court transcripts that proves that these men use their religion, be it right or wrong, in their eyes, to say that the reason they do what they do is because Allah allows them to have slaves as non-Muslims. Now, no. Listen, hold on.
Right.
Hold on. That's what they say
So-
to the girls.
right.
So they one of the instances is they took a M, which was an M for Muhammad. They used it. They put it into a fire and they burnt the M on the side of her thigh. That she was then now. She was the property of Muhammad and the Muslims. Now, we cannot disagree that, as everyone's seen, that there is a huge problem with that, and it happens everywhere. Now, do I think that Russians, Albanians, Scottish, Welsh, do I think that they don't do these crimes? Absolutely, of course they do. But you've got to look at the statistics of these places. When you have a place like Telford, when you have a place that has a very small minority of Muslim men in that community, you take away the old people, you take away the women, and you take away the children, 65% of men in Telford who are Muslim participated in the rape of young white girls. Now that, as a statistic, is an issue. So, I agree. The biggest problem is white men, but there's also different types of crimes against children that we need to be factual about.
Okay, so of course Shabana Mahmood has started another grooming inquiry, which I'm sure you're welcoming,
She
right?
hasn't. They've actually.
She's announced it, right?
No, she's actually, what they've done is they've actually gone against it, and they've actually voted against doing a grooming inquiry, and therefore Labour now will not proceed with the grooming inquiry. And I'll tell you why.
Do you think there should be one?
Do you know why they do that? Because every single place that has the highest number of Pakistani grooming gangs is all Labour run. So the councils are Labour run, and it's basically they're worried about the Muslim vote. Up until the Green Party, the Green Party have taken some of the Muslim vote now, but up till a few years ago, they took the Muslim vote. Now, they're scared to go against that grain, saying, there is a problem in our town. There is a problem with Pakistani men doing this to young girls, because they think that they'll lose the vote, which will then in turn lose their jobs. So, no, there isn't an inquiry, and I think that is an issue, and there should be one, of course.
Okay,
Can I ask you one
that's
question?
I know.
Hold
Let
on,
me talk to him, bro.
Right.
Okay.
okay.
After, yeah?
So obviously I'm listening to your
Live, yeah?
yeah. So I'm listening to what you've got to say,
Yeah.
Because you obviously are very instrumental in. I would say you're very close with Tommy, and you're instrumental in his marches and the like. So,
Tommy.
so I
big up
wanna,
Tommy.
so I wanna hear that. I mean, you got the cameraman here as well. So, I'm sure you're aware of other studies as well, or other reports that have come out.
Yep.
You've got the NPCC report that came out. You got the CSA
Regarding what?
regarding child group-based sexual exploitation, because grooming is not a term that's used in the literature.
Yes, agreed.
Which I'm sure
Agreed.
you're aware of. So you got the NPCC, you got the CSA, I think 25 to 26. You got the Home Office report. All of them, as you've acknowledged as well, claim that majority of the group-based child sexual exploitation are majority white people.
And you know what that
So
is? Because we're a white country.
If I
That's
can
why,
just finish,
that's it.
because the way you made it seem, you said there were individuals, lone white people on,
No,
computers.
they're groups.
If
They're
I-
groups. They're paedophile groups.
Let me just make
online.
my point.
Yeah.
So there are individuals that are online, and they are, trying to groom these people. But what I'm telling you, and there's copious examples. You got the Glasgow 7, you got the Cornwall gang, and there are plenty such examples of white gangs, like I think it was the Glasgow 7.
Yeah.
They said
This
that
isn't a tit for tat. I think you're
No,
trying to do
no,
a tit for tat.
no.
There's problems in every community. You're not understanding this.
look,
No.
I let you
I
speak
know.
for
That's
a
a
long
great. I'm
period.
sorry.
Yeah.
It's my
So-
ADHD.
so-
I apologise.
So if you cut me in, it's going to seem like that. But I want to give a comprehensive answer like you did, and I'll let you finish.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is that, and I'm correcting this notion that when white people do it, it's not just lone people doing it. There are group-based people
Agreed.
doing it.
100%.
And I do understand your notion that you're saying that, look, there's a disproportionate amount of people. But I would even say, according to the CSA report, it's not a disproportionate amount of Pakistanis that are doing it. However, when you're talking about individual areas like Telford and Rochdale and the likes,
They're 2.5%.
right, no, but that's what I'm saying. I've quoted you the report that according to the CSA, it doesn't mention that. Now, if a new report comes out that goes into more detail, we're more than happy to look into that. And I'm not denying it. I'm not taking away from the victims. We're just talking in terms of numbers, because you brought the numbers up. Yeah. Now, my response to you and my point to you is that rather than focusing, I think it's good that we're focusing on the group-based aspect of things, but I don't think we should just restrict it to that. We should look at group-based, triplet-based, double-based, single-based.
I think we should just look at it as a whole.
Do you see? And that's what I'm saying, that whoever it is should be, and our punishment is that slinging them in jail is not enough. Giving them a few years in jail is
People
not
that gang
enough.
rape children.
Yeah,
They should be hung.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be hung.
Absolutely.
Instantly.
If you start a petition on that, I would sign it, and many people in the
there'd be no
park,
one
I
in
think, would.
government
That's true. That is true. That is true.
I think everybody
Yeah.
here would sign it
Yeah.
because no one finds it
Can
acceptable.
I ask you one question? Do you believe there is a problem with Pakistani men raping young children in this country?
I think there's a group. Yeah, of course there is.
Okay.
Pakistanis,
And I believe,
Indians.
I believe there are
Sikhs,
groups
yeah.
of white men that. I mean, we've seen
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So we can agree on that.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
not-
Okay.
Yeah,
So
you know what I mean?
why are you the only one I've ever spoke to that will agree on that? Why are you different? Because
Right.
you are different. Because every time I bring that up, they try and tell me that it's not true, and you're agreeing that there is a problem with like small numbers of men being in small towns.
Yeah.
Targeting young white girls.
I'll tell you.
Why is that?
As soon as that
And it's
came
happening
out,
everywhere. Why?
Yeah, as soon as that came out, and you can do a Google search on this as well. Yeah, 500 mosques wrote a joint letter, public letter, condemning the grooming that was taking place. But unfortunately and sadly, I think social media has become an echo chamber where certain people, it doesn't come into their algorithms when people do this. I've got copious posts on my X page in which I am constantly calling out whether
fair
it's, Pakistanis,
Yeah.
Afghans,
Yeah.
British people,
As we should. As we
English
should.
people.
As we should.
I think regardless of color, regardless of creed, if anyone justifies it,
Yeah.
frankly,
Yeah.
I personally think they should be hung as well if it's proven. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And especially, and this is a point that I bring up in the discussion as well,
Yeah.
that look, you've got these people that have and claim that, you know what, we're doing this because in our religion, so their interpretation of religion,
Yeah.
they're not
Why are
imams.
there so
One
many-
second.
Sorry, go on.
Their interpretation of faith, But then I would say that if you look at the headlines, if you look at the headlines, there are in the church, thousands of children that have been abused in the
Absolutely.
UK.
Yep,
That's the
absolutely.
headline,
It's
BBC.
big, massive.
Thousands in Pennsylvania
Yep.
in the church. Thousands in France.
Big issue.
Thousands in
Big issue.
Italy.
Yep.
Thousands in Spain.
Yeah.
Forget a grooming gang. This is an epidemic.
Yes.
And
Well,
this is by religious
yeah.
people that use the Bible as a pretext, but never, as a Muslim man, would I say, even though there are certain verses in the Bible that I would say are very risky in terms of raping young girls. But
Can you quote that?
yeah, for example, in the Old Testament, it says that if you rape a young girl,
Yeah.
give the father 50 shekels,
Okay.
and you must now marry that child and you can't divorce
Okay,
it.
can I respond to that before you carry on?
Of
Because it's
course,
important, because
of
it's the
course,
Bible.
of course, yeah.
So, number one is that I don't know that verse. And number two, I would say to you is the reason we have a New Testament is because what happened is the Old Testament was looked at and it was reformed in a way. I don't know if that's, listen, I'm a Christian, devout Christian, but I'm not as much, I have dyslexia, so I don't know the Bible in and out the way I should, and I'm still learning as I should. But the New Testament was introduced to basically, and none of that is there. The problem we have with certain aspects of the Quran is when I see interviews made with Muslims abroad, as in the Middle East, they all call you hypocrites. They say that you're not real Muslims. They say that you're not going by the faith the way that Allah has told you to, and that you're too westernized. What do you say to those Muslims that are in those countries that say, because you're not abiding by what the Quran says in its entirety, and you're basically picking and choosing what you want to go with in this country because it's westernized, what would you say to those Muslims that say that you aren't real Muslims because of the way that you practice your religion here?
I mean, anyone who thinks I'm not a real Muslim or I'm a
Do you understand the question?
Yeah,
though?
yeah. That, or thinks I'm a good Muslim or a bad Muslim, they're welcome to come to
But, no,
Speaker's
but why do
Corner.
they say that?
I don't know. They'll have to come here and have a conversation with me,
But
right?
do you believe that Muslims in the Middle East practice the religion of Islam the way that you do?
Some do, some don't. Just like Muslims aren't a monolith, Christians aren't a monolith, right?
Yeah.
So you've got some Christians that practice
yeah.
the faith properly,
Yeah.
some that don't.
Yeah,
some
agreed.
Muslims that do,
Yeah.
some that don't. So
But
we're
some-
not a monolith,
Yes,
right?
I understand. But what they say is that if you follow Islam, you follow Islam. There is one Islam, there is one Muhammad, there is one Allah.
Well, I would
and you
claim
have,
that I do, right?
And you have to go by the book.
Yeah.
But what the Muslims say in Middle East is that every Muslim that stood here right now isn't practicing Islam the way that Islam was presented by Muhammad and such. Because in the Quran, the reason why ISIS did what they did is, and they specifically say this, is that because in the Quran it says they can take non-Muslims as slaves. Now, you can say that that's not true, but we know it is. But you don't do that in this country. I'm glad you don't. But why do they if you look at it in that respect, is if they say that there and that's why they do it, why don't you guys do it here?
Right. So the first point you mentioned was about the Old Testament, right?
Yeah, sorry,
you said
yeah.
that that's
Yeah.
the Old Testament,
Yeah, we
and then
reformed
you,
it.
you've got
Yeah.
you reformed it. You got the New Testament.
Yeah.
But the question still arises: who presented the Old Testament? It was the Holy Trinity, you
Yeah.
believe, yeah? So
Yes.
the Jesus was the
Yeah.
author of the Old Testament. So there was a time in which Jesus
No, it
said,
wasn't Jesus, it was the disciples that read, but yes.
No, but the
story.
Old Testament
Yes.
came from God,
Yes,
right?
Yes,
Which is
yeah,
the Holy Trinity,
Yeah.
which Jesus is a part of. So that is a law that's come from Jesus. So, and secondly, when you're saying that there are certain people in the Middle East that believe I'm a Muslim, I'm not a Muslim, frankly, I don't really care about their
Yeah.
opinion unless, you know, they're
But they
able
live
to...
in the majority Muslim country. I mean, you guys don't live in a majority Muslim country. You live in a Western country. Now, if
I don't think that's the standard of
Well, no,
who's following the faith or
actually-
not, right?
Actually, when you look at the history of Islam, especially back to the Crusades and what they were trying to do at the gates of Vienna, they say that Muslims and Islam is about dominance, and anyone that doesn't follow the faith of Islam must pay or be murdered. Now, going back in history, that is a factual, because you look through history, anyone that doesn't convert into being a Muslim must either pay the jizya, is that right, jizya? Is that right?
Jizya, yeah.
Or they will be killed. Now, that is how they've lived for millions of years, or well, not millions, sorry, that's a stupid thing, thousands of years. So why has that changed now that you guys are here in the West?
Right, so you're talking about jizya. What was the point you mentioned before jizya?
The point that I was trying to make.
Was it?
I think this is an incorrect narration.
What was the point before the jizya?
No, about Jizya.
Islam was about the water, the way that, from my perspective, and I don't know.
This is an
Yeah.
incorrect.
I don't know Islam
fine. We're gonna have
as
a
in the
conversation,
Quran.
brother. Absolutely,
But from what I
absolutely.
researched, the Muslims in the Middle East, for the history of their religion,
Yeah.
is about going into countries, taking
Okay,
over
I got you.
governments,
I remember
and then,
now.
and
I
now
remember.
saying to
Right.
them, you either pay or you're murdered.
Right.
So
So-
why don't you do that here?
Right. So when you're talking about the Prophet, peace be upon him, yeah, because that's whom we believe is the secondary, like the Quran is the primary source, the Prophet and his hadith are secondary source, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's those are the evidences within Islam. So when you look at the Prophet, peace be upon him's life, then we need to see it rife with constant invasions, and there have to be historians that have told us that he killed hundreds and thousands of people. But when you actually look at the numbers, yeah, in the battles that he had in a space of maybe 10 years, only 4,000 people were killed in battle. But when you're looking at, for example, let's do a like for like, in the Old Testament, when you're looking at First Kings, you're seeing a death toll of, say, 100,000 people
Yeah.
that have been killed in
Yeah.
one battle.
Yes.
So when we're talking about bloodlust or when we're talking about killing,
Okay.
we're not seeing the numbers match
Yeah,
up here.
yeah.
And then when we're also seeing the Prophet, peace be upon him, and one of the famous treaties that he was dealing with,
Yeah.
the Treaty of Hudaybiyah,
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
it was very much against Islam.
Okay.
And he could have taken over Mecca because they were literally there on the outskirts,
Yeah.
and they chose not to.
Okay.
When he was there in Ta'if.
Yeah.
And, you know,
So you're saying years ago it was different back then in terms of the numbers that were murdered. You're saying, okay, so my question
and
would be...
secondly, in terms of
Can I
practicality
just
that
finish
you
that because
mentioned.
I'm going to forget if I don't
Okay,
answer it.
sure.
Based on what you just said there is that back then it was different. Back then they murdered people. Back then it was like that's the way it was. But when
That's
we
not
look,
what I said.
no, sorry. So in terms of battles,
Yeah.
so you said 4,000 people died under Muhammad, but then
In
you
10
said
years.
the kings murdered.
First Kings,
yeah, okay.
Old Testament.
Okay, so why is it in the last 50 years when we look at the slaughter of individuals from another faith, why is it predominantly the Muslim faith that are doing the mass killings?
Right, let's look at one of the most comprehensive studies that we have right now, yeah? Which is it's a quantitative study by Naveed Sheikh.
Okay.
He looked at all of the killings that were done from 0 to 2008.
Yeah.
And at number one, with a whopping 178 million, was Christianity.
Damn.
Second were anti-theists. Then it was the kind of the Hindu kind of groups, and then we as Muslims were there at, I think, number 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're looking at figures, if you're looking at numbers, that's not
No,
the case.
the question I'm asking is why?
Numbers.
Why? No. Why is it that it's not other religions doing the same thing? Why is it
I
predominantly?
just proved to you that Christianity is number one.
No. In recent, I said, how long did I say? 50 years. I said
Yeah,
50.
0 to 2008. That's still within 50 years, right?
Zero?
Can you please
What
Yeah.
do you mean by zero? What do you
Zero, like birth of Christ.
mean? No, I'm talking about the last, say, 50 years, our lifetime.
Look,
No,
if the
let's-
study is
okay.
till 2008, We're now in
No,
2026.
but, okay, let's forget
it's
the
in
zero
the last
number.
50 years,
Let's
right?
forget the 50 number. Let's forget the zero number. Let's go back. Let's think about the 50. Do you follow the same religion as ISIS in Iran? In Syria. So what makes ISIS, their Islam, different to your Islam?
Yeah, it's a deviant cult that has an extreme interpretation of certain views.
So it's
that have
interpretation
been-
based.
It's interpretation based, but they've also been geopolitically backed by certain entities and certain groups.
Okay,
Who
but
created them?
okay, hold on.
Yeah, I mean, some might argue.
we'll
some
go
might
in-
argue.
I'm sure we're going to go
Yeah,
into that in
yeah,
a second.
yeah.
But one second. But based on what you've just said, there's interpretation. Now that's the issue. Some people interpret that your book tells them to murder people. Would that be correct? Interpretation-wise only.
Correct interpretation? No.
Okay. No, yeah,
No.
but in terms of their interpretation, they think your book tells them to murder people. Yes
I mean,
or no?
someone can read Harry Potter and think it's telling me to kill people. Those people are
it's not the same.
psychotics,
It's
right?
not the same.
Let me give
they
you an example.
think that's the word of God.
Right.
They follow that interpretation based on the word of God.
That interpretation is on context.
Okay,
basically.
but they interpret it like they can take slaves as long as they're not Muslims.
Let me
that's
ask you a
the
simple
problem
question.
Going back to
Let
Telford,
me ask you a simple
is that
question.
They are interpreting the Quran and using the Quran to justify their actions.
Right.
And that's so you've just proven the fact that there are different interpretations of the Quran based on where you are and how you see it.
So-
and that
so the
is
brother-
a massive point.
so the brother
because
made
we
a good
only
point,
follow we only follow Christianity in one way. Now Christians
No, you don't. You
we
don't.
do.
You don't.
No,
No,
we
no,
do.
no.
There's
No, but look,
But
you
let me respond to your point, yeah? So, if you take any verse out of context, yeah, it says, oh, behead the the disbelievers wherever you see them.
Okay.
You take anything out of context, you're going to have a warped understanding of reality.
Why so many do it? Why do so many take it out of context?
They don't, though. That's what I'm saying, because you won't
Taliban,
see... Can I finish my
ISIS,
point? With respect.
Al-Qaeda.
Can I finish my
I
point?
mean, it's so many.
Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Mujahideen,
Yep.
they don't take those verses out of context. Those verses don't get brought up. The only people that bring up those verses, ironically, are the people that are telling them to leave their country or that have a warped understanding of Islam. Those verses never get brought up. And
think
if
they would disagree with you.
And if
They
you,
would disagree
no,
with you.
Look, damn it. For us to have a conversation, you have to let me finish my
Yeah,
point, right?
sorry, go on.
So, if you take verses out of context, which they don't, yeah, then of course you're going to have a warped understanding. There's a verse even in the Bible where Jesus is saying, for those enemies of mine that didn't believe that I should be king over them, bring them forth in front of me and behead them. Now, frankly, I think that's a very violent and extreme verse. But anytime I bring this up to a Christian,
You won't find that
Christian,
in the New
they
Testament.
do.
You won't find that
It's in the New Testament.
It isn't. You have to show me that.
Okay, bring my Bible, please.
What were you saying?
Talks
So-
about beheadings.
It talks about killing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like I said,
killing,
I
yeah.
haven't seen that. If you can show me that,
Absolutely.
I will
In
discuss
the
it with you.
context. Like,
Yeah.
Well, there's only one way you behead someone. There's no much context in
No,
that.
but
Killing.
You know what I mean?
I think it was
you
killing.
said beheading,
Yeah, I'm correcting myself. Killing.
so there's no. It's not in the
Yeah,
Bible.
bring them forth in
Okay.
front of me and kill them.
But do you understand what I'm saying about the interpretation? Because
No,
you seem like
I'm
a
not.
reasonable guy. But
Yeah.
when you look at the terrorist organisations around the globe that say they follow Islam, and the reason they do that is because the Prophet has told them to take over those lands. Take over those lands and behead kill them where you see them. All this sort of stuff. So we have a position where, would you not think that some aspects of the Quran should be reformed to modernise the ability for not that interpretation to happen, so terrorist organisations do not commit the crimes and atrocities that they do, like we did with the Bible?
I think the thing that needs to be reformed are the way people engage with texts. Because if somebody takes verses out of context, you can reform the book as much as you want. If the person
there.
is going to take things out of context, that's never going to stop. For example, you claim that the Bible's been reformed, but still, people that want to take stuff out of context will take stuff
Yeah.
out of context.
Yeah.
For example, 1 Samuel 15 verse 3 talks about killing babies, right? And Netanyahu, he quoted Amalek when he did the genocide in Gaza. Now, I'm sure you'd condemn that verse. You'd say, you know what, that was, I don't believe in killing babies.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not, of course.
So, but that's a verse in the Bible. And you would
But
say,
not the New Testament.
yeah, the Old
Yeah.
Testament that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
revealed by Jesus.
Yeah.
So,
So-
but
so the
that
re-
was
Yeah, go
so
on.
that's
Sorry.
what I'm saying, that if someone has a disease that they will take things out of
Yeah.
context,
Yeah.
that's never going to
But it's
stop.
not just
One
individuals.
second. So then when these verses of killing the believers wherever you see them, all a person needs to do, and this is a challenge to whoever's watching, check the verse before and check the verse after. That's all you need to do. Yeah, about the beheading the disbelievers. It's talking about a war context, and it's saying that if they, if you're able to come to a mutual understanding, then that's fine. However, when you're taking these certain groups, for example, ISIS, don't take what ISIS says. Let's look at the people that encouraged ISIS to grow. The then Home Secretary or the Foreign Secretary, I think John Kerry of the US, he said, we allowed ISIS to grow.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard
because
that.
we wanted to use them as a counterweight against Bashar al-Assad.
I have heard that.
But the problem was Bashar al-Assad then united with Russia, and by then it was too late. But then ISIS had grown too much. Netanyahu himself said, ISIS is brilliant for us because it gives us somebody to help influence the region by having an enemy.
What about the rest?
Yes. So then when you want to look at the Mujahideen, if you look at, for example, Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, he's actually got clips where the Mujahideen are being celebrated. They're being given tours in America. Why? Because there is a common enemy, which is the USSR, and they are. And here's what the American said. He goes, "You are fighting a just war, and you are fighting for a just God, and we are with you." So at that time, and even Rambo, I don't know if you've seen Rambo.
All of them.
Was it Rambo 4? Rambo 3. Yeah, he's helping the Mujahideen. Why? Because at that time...
that's a film, don't you?
Yeah, it's a film built on reality, right?
But you do agree that there are serious issues around the world with extreme Islamic terrorist groups?
Yeah, I acknowledge there are Islamic terrorists, and they need to be dealt with. There are Christian terrorists, they need to be dealt with. There are Hindu terrorists, a lot of madness going on in India right now because of the extremist BJP government, and same with the Sikhs as well, same with the Buddhists as well, as you got the 969 group in Myanmar.
But again, I'll take your point.
Yeah.
One of the questions, I mean, in terms of Sharia law, would you, if you had the opportunity...
Sorry, you said something about Jizya. I just wanted to respond to that.
Let me just, before I forget this,
Sure.
I to go back to it.
Yeah.
In terms of Sharia law, because that's, when I look at the Muslims in the Middle East and how they talk about Sharia law, and they say that the only law that should be implemented wherever Muslims live should be Sharia law, do you, as a Muslim, if you had the opportunity to, if you were the Prime Minister of this country, would you implement Sharia law in this country?
So there's a hidden subtext in that question, which is that would I force Sharia law in this country?
That's not what I said.
I know.
The question is, if you had the opportunity...
I've got your question.
I'm not talking about being forced.
Yeah.
I'm asking, you are the guy in charge.
Yeah.
Would you want Sharia law to be implemented?
No, because it's a non-Muslim
So you're not
country.
a Muslim?
No, it's not a non-Muslim. No, in fact, this makes me more of a Muslim. I'll tell you why. Because as a Muslim, if I am...
You're a moderate Muslim. You're not a...
No,
you
because
are.
I'll
You
tell you why.
definitely are.
Because if you wait for my response, if I'm a Muslim leader of a non-Muslim land, firstly, that's never going to happen. But if I do become a Muslim leader of a non-Muslim land, why on earth would I force a lifestyle upon them that is alien to them, that they don't want, that they will rebel against, and it will cause a lot of bloodshed?
Yeah.
In fact, we're told...
He's a moderate Muslim.
No, we're told...
You're a moderate Muslim.
No.
You are.
No.
You are.
Islam,
You are.
shall I tell you something? Shall I tell you something?
You can't be moderate.
Shall I tell you
And
something?
I actually think you would be...
Islam
you would
is
be-
moderate.
You would be murdered if you went to Islam with those...
No.
To a country...
Islam-
If you went to Syria or Afghanistan with those views, you would be ousted.
Listen to what you're saying.
No, you would.
Listen to what you're saying though. You're saying Syria.
No.
Syria is a majority Muslim country. Of course they're going to implement Sharia law.
No. I
Britain
didn't
is
say
not
that. I didn't say
Muslim.
that. I said your views. You would be ousted in those majority Muslim countries because of your westernized view of Islam.
Okay, listen to me,
That's
Danny.
just a fact.
Okay.
You don't
You
know.
might
Wait,
not
one
like
second, one
it.
second.
You might not like it, but that is a fact.
So,
you would.
so I am.
And you'd
So I
probably
am.
be
So I am.
heckled and stones would be thrown.
So Danny,
at you.
I'm an Orthodox Muslim. Yeah.
Okay.
You've probably seen me on social media. I've got.
I haven't, but I will.
Well,
hopefully to see
you're
you.
clearly lying. No, I'm joking.
I genuinely haven't.
So I've got 1 million subscribers on
Have you seen
YouTube.
it?
Tommy
I've seen it.
Robinson, he's blocked me. He's had enough of me.
Yeah.
So
Are you Ali Dawah's friend?
I'm Ali Dawah's friend. Yeah.
Okay. The
So-
guy, Ali Dawah, who said he'd marry off his 6-year-old daughter. That
No,
one.
I'm the same. So you're the same Christian who's friends with Sam Shamon,
Who's Sam? I've no
Sam
idea.
Shamon, the
No idea
Christian
that
that
is.
beat his own wife.
No idea that
Or
is.
David Wood. You
No
know
idea.
David Wood?
No idea
Who
that is.
molested a 13-year-old girl. I mean,
No.
we can play these games,
No,
Danny.
no.
You know what I
He's
mean?
your friend. They're not mine.
Well, of course they're your friend.
How are they
They're
my
the
friend?
biggest Christian apologists that you guys have at this moment in
No,
time.
I'm talking about a personal friend. They're not my personal friends.
Okay, so what did Ali do? What did he
Ali
say?
stood here, and I can show you the video if you like. Is he still here? No, he's gone.
No, he did.
He stood here and he said that if she was sound of mind, if she was this and that, I said, what, 6 years old? He said, if she was ready, I'd let her marry.
If she was ready. So what did he imply by that?
A 6-year-old child marrying a...
No, he said if...
No.
I need to see the context.
Okay? It was
Because
on
I've
the
spoken
age.
to him.
It was about
Right.
the age. It
So
wasn't about...
you saw a clip, right?
No, I was here. I interviewed him.
Right, you
It was
interviewed
me.
him. You saw a clip?
No. I interviewed him
Okay,
and asked
you've
him,
got the clip.
if your daughter was 6 years... No, sorry. I'm going to correct myself. 9. It
Yeah.
wasn't 6. I'm thinking of the Aisha. I said, if your daughter was 9 and you felt like she was mentally ready, physically ready, would you allow her to marry a man of, say, 25? He said yes.
He's a friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the view that he holds.
Well, why did he say it then?
Well, why do people say a lot of things? Sometimes they...
Well, it's a bit of a weird thing to say.
Well, there's
And
a
it
lot of
goes-
weird things that we
it
hear
goes
at
back-
Speaker's Corner,
it
right?
also goes back
Maybe
to
I'll have to
Aisha.
ask him what he meant.
Some people say that in the Hadiths she was 18, some people say she was 16. When you look at the Muslims in the Middle East, because I don't take what you guys say, I listen to the real Muslims in the Middle East, the ones that live in Afghanistan, the ones that live in Syria, the ones that practice Islam the way it should be, not the way you guys do it, and they say that she was 6 and that is just the way it is. And that's why in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, young girls, and we've seen multiple videos, their hands are forced from them and they are forced to sign. Why are you lying? It's true. You don't think.
You're lying.
So you don't think children.
One second.
Okay. So you don't believe that children,
No.
young children, are married to Muslim men in Muslim countries.
One second.
But
Right.
why are we talking about other countries when we're here in England?
Right.
Because
No.
talking,
And in
So-
I'm talking about Muslims, and
Yeah,
this isn't a Muslim country.
Let's look at your criteria.
what
One
is the
second.
message?
One second.
What is
One
the
second.
message?
The message is
Let's look at your
you shouldn't
criteria.
rape children.
You had like 10, 15
you shouldn't
minutes.
No,
rape
but you can
children.
speak to him afterwards,
You shouldn't
brother.
rape children.
You can speak to him
What is the
afterwards.
message of the
So,
email?
can we finish our conversation
I
first?
don't know. He's
Danny,
not been around for 10 years.
Danny.
Okay, what do you represent then?
Me, England.
England?
Yeah.
And what's your message for England then?
What's my message
Can
for
we
England?
continue?
Yeah, what is your message?
Safety.
Can we finish our conversation?
Yeah, for our children.
Can we finish
for
our
your
conversation?
family, for my family, no matter what.
This-
no matter what.
this criteria
Safety.
of yours, yeah,
We've got a couple
that-
of minutes because I really
yeah,
have to
yeah.
go. I've got to
So-
take my daughter to the cinema. So.
Okay.
I'm here when you're ready to have a discussion
yeah.
anyway.
Okay, so you mentioned a bunch of
Because
points,
this
yeah?
is
So,
irrelevant.
pertaining... You made me forget my point, brother. That's why it's important that we stay on track, yeah?
Yeah.
So you're saying the criteria that you have is that Middle Eastern countries, that's where you take people to be following their religion properly.
Yes.
Frankly, I don't agree with that criteria because if I was to use that same criteria for yourself, that if I
We're
take
a Christian nation.
No, but if I take, for example, Vatican, where you've got so many Christian, so many Christian leaders that are molesting children, and
Agreed.
I'm gonna use that as a
Agreed.
yardstick to measure
Agreed.
you. I don't think that would be fair. Or if I take America.
No, I think you've misunderstood
One
my point.
second, I listen to you. So in America, if I take that as
We're
a
talking
yardstick,
about other countries, though.
where you've got majority of
I
the
don't care about
states,
other countries, I care about
majority,
England. He wants to talk about the
brother,
other
please.
countries.
Where you've got majority of the states that actually don't have an age of consent, where there are children as young as 12 getting married, and if you look at that proto-evangelium of James, Christians believe, historically Mary was 12 when God impregnated her. So they justify that and they're getting married as young as 12. Now
I'm talking about these days,
but
right
I'm
now.
talking about right now as well.
But you can't marry a child in England.
You can in the United States. You can
England.
marry them as
I don't
young
know
as
about
12.
that. I don't know. That could be
America-
true. Listen, if that's
Look.
true, then that's wrong. But I'm talking about England. You cannot marry a child in England.
Right.
But you can
But
marry
you're
a
talking
child.
about Islamic countries to
that
judge me
marry-
by.
No,
so I'm
not
going to
you.
use
I'm not-
Christian
listen, brother.
countries to judge you by,
Let me
right?
tell you so.
Yeah.
This is a Christian country. The reason I'm saying is that when I do my research on how Muslims are, the way of life for Muslims, the way they practice their religion, I don't look at westernized Muslims because you guys have come integrated into our world because you haven't always
Look,
been
Danny,
here.
you got to look
You know
at
what
the
I'm trying to
evidence.
say, though.
Look,
That's what I'm saying.
I know what you're
They
trying to
practice
say,
it, yeah.
but you can't look at a criteria that you've invented that I'm going to
Oh,
take
no,
these
yeah.
because I'm
That's
going to
how I
take
see
these
it.
Muslim countries that don't follow
Because they
Sharia
tell
law.
the truth. They
Do they
tell the
follow
truth.
Sharia law?
Who?
These Muslim countries that you're
All
judging.
of the countries,
Yeah?
the Muslim countries, yeah.
So Malaysia follows Sharia law.
No, Dubai is a westernized Muslim country.
Right.
You guys, people in Dubai, if you can drink
Does
in
Bangladesh
Dubai,
follow Sharia law?
you can buy alcohol
Does
in Dubai.
Bangladesh
That
follow
means
Sharia
to me
law?
that they do not follow Sharia
Does
law.
Bangladesh follow Sharia law?
I have
We're
no
in
idea.
England, though.
I have no
Does
idea.
Pakistan
true.
follow Sharia
Agreed.
law?
Agreed.
I don't know why we're talking
That's-
about other countries.
Yeah,
Because that's the
the
criteria he
conversation.
brought up.
That's the quotation.
Yeah. Does Pakistan follow Sharia law?
Where's who?
Does Pakistan follow Sharia law?
I don't know. I think so.
Right. So you're saying
so
you're
how
gonna-
many is there? What if they doesn't? Hold on.
So
I've got
Danny,
Karen.
what you're saying
You're telling
is
me Pakistanis don't follow Islam?
they don't follow Sharia law. They're a secular country with a secular
That's
law.
not true. Women in Pakistan.
Danny.
No, that's not true.
It is true.
Okay, you may prove me
Britain
wrong.
colonized Hindustan, which is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, for 200
And it
years.
helped you-
Then
helped
there
them.
was
It helped
partition.
them.
Then there was partition,
helped
and
them.
then they were left with a secular law, with a secular government.
Yeah.
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 Yes, it's called the Islamic Republic of
Yeah.
Pakistan,
Yeah.
but it's actually a secular country.
Yeah.
So when you're judging me and saying that, you know what, there are these Muslim
I'm not
countries.
judging you. I'm judging the Muslim religion
Yeah.
based on the countries that are predominantly Muslim. I don't talk about.
I
and
think
listen
that's a
to-
false criteria.
No,
you should be
because
judging
they're
them by
telling
their
me not to
no,
listen to
but
you.
you should be judging us by our adherence to the scripture, right? Because that's evidence. You can have, people in Saudi Arabia that are not following scripture, but because they're in a majority Muslim country, you're not going to say, "I'm still going to take and I'm going to use you as a yardstick." No, you use somebody as a yardstick that is following the religion, that's able to quote the religion and give facts. For example, yourself, you said you don't know the Bible, yeah?
Well, no,
but you
I
say
didn't
you
say that. I didn't say that. I
you
said
haven't
because of my
memorized verses
because of my
of the
dyslexia,
Bible, right?
I struggle to
Memorize
but
verses of the Bible.
I read it in prison when I was. That's why I found Jesus.
Right. So you found Jesus in prison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people.
I've got 30 seconds. I've really got to go. But
Right.
It's
So,
been a good discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
it's been good.
We should have a part 2.
Yeah.
So pertaining jizya,
Yeah.
the thing is jizya is like a military tax, national defense tax, that if a person is not helping the Muslims defend the land, then they have to pay money for defense.
Okay.
If they want to fight, then there's no jizya.
Yeah.
If they can't afford it, case in point,
Yeah.
Umar Khattab,
Yeah.
who was the second caliph,
Okay.
he said if the non-Muslims cannot afford it,
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
they cannot pay,
I get your point.
then
I get
assist.
your point.
You see?
It could be a bit of taqiyya, but we don't know. It's lovely being
Brother,
talking
the
to you.
only taqiyya was from Eusebius, brother.
Hey, good conversation. Thank you. very
Take
much
it
for
easy,
your
brother.
time.
Yeah,
You-
Danny.
Let me go over there.
Whose microphones are these?
Take it.
Dummy. Yeah.
I do that all the time. I always walk up. Genuinely though, thank you for your conversation. I really appreciate it.
All
You have
the
a
best,
wonderful day.
brother.
Thank you.
All the best.